Media coverage has been in a frenzy over the thwarted plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, which has ended with over a dozen individuals being charged with domestic terrorism. Molly, your take on this is probably the same as everybody else. First of all, do they even have a right to organize like this? That seems to be the talking point.
Right.
And yes, they do.
Yes.
But where do you see this going?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like these are a lot of wannabes, and it seems like there's just a lot of hate and discontent in different circles, and then they get together, whether it's the internet that made it easier or maybe their neighborhood folks. But this particular group of individuals, they organized their plot to kidnap her from a vacation home. Basically, they were mad at her. She's been a target since April when she did a harsh crackdown over COVID, and they felt like it was their rights being violated. So I think whether it's this particular group that's in trouble, whether it's the Proud Boys, whether it's white supremacy groups, whether it's even Antifa, it's like anybody that has an axe to grind, there is an internet page for you where you can find like-minded individuals and create a plan.
All right. So I saw an interview that you for this discussion that was
on NPR. Yeah.
NPR,
whether it was legal to have them.
whether it's legal to do this. It was so wrong. The answers they gave in this interview, this McCord woman,
yes,
were so off base, it was crazy.
Well, I thought it was interesting. And so before you tell me why it's wrong, I'll explain for viewers that essentially she was just saying, hey, our Constitution doesn't give them the right to exist. Militia groups were supposed to be formed by the government for the government in order to assist and help overthrow, adversarial forces. Yeah. So they're not authorized. That was her take. And you're saying contraire.
Well, I'm saying the First Amendment. Look, everybody, if you've been around more than 30 years, you understand the Nazis making this Nazi group marching through Skokie.
Right.
And all of a sudden we find that they were able to do that.
Because it was a peaceful protest.
It was a peaceful protest.
Even though it was a town of Holocaust survivors.
They've had situations where they've actually circled, they've circled temples, synagogues. They've had demonstrations right out in the streets. The First Amendment, like it or not, says they can do that. And the U.S. Supreme Court says, yes, they can do that. They can do this. Of course, they can't go plotting to kidnap a governor, but they certainly can have this organization. The other part of it was this discussion of, oh, gee whiz, this has only started now because of Facebook or social media. This has been around for 40, 50 years, hasn't it?
Naysayers, coup, folks that want to start a coup or upend whatever power is in charge at the time. And I think that's what you're seeing now. It's almost like anybody with an axe to grind can find a group that will mirror their thoughts. And then I think part of this, too, it goes back to even Whitmer talking about Trump not denouncing it, and whether or not you agree with his policies or not, people do have the right. That is what makes our country great. We do have the right to express our opinion. We don't have a right to plot kidnappings and be armed and threaten the lives of other people. But what's happening is that you've got a few stray extremists, it seems to me, in whatever group it is, and then suddenly when you have something like the death of George Floyd, they become the attention becomes drawn to them because suddenly whether it's Antifa or if it's another group that is shooting or attacking individuals, that becomes the focus for the media as opposed to the bigger issue.
Here's what I was waiting for in the discussion. There's a way to solve this,
yes.
Okay? The way to solve it is there are laws that say we can trace the money of where this comes from. And if they cause a problem, if they burn down a building like Antifa.
Right.
Antifa burns down a building, Antifa holds they hold a rally where somebody is killed, somebody is injured.
Right.
What you do is you trace the money. Who gave Antifa the money to do that?
Like a terrorist
If it's
group.
George Soros, you go after George Soros. Whoever, if it's Koch brothers, you go after the Koch brothers. So there's a way to get to that, but it's not to say they can't do it.
Right.
Because the First Amendment says they can do that. They can't go, obviously, they can't go kidnap commit a crime, but they certainly can organize, they can march. Again, how do you get anything more repulsive than having Nazis walking through the very center of a heavily populated Jewish area, and to do that for nothing other than to make those people uncomfortable, to create outrage. Supreme Court says, yes, you can do that.
Yeah, they have a right to peaceably assemble. But it's going to be interesting to see what will become of these groups, because unless they're labeled as domestic terror groups, law enforcement's not necessarily going to look into them.
Yeah.
They're just going to consider them, just another group that has an opinion that you may or may not like.
Right. Molly, thank you for joining me.
All right, thanks, Pat.